So Formula 1 is on a bit of a break right now. You might have noticed it's only driving us a little stir crazy after a few weeks. We've still got a few weeks to go. And a while ago, I did a video about the best drivers in Formula 1 history who never won the World Championships, i.e. the best and most impressive drivers who came close to getting a World Championship but didn't quite get it over the line. Now I narrowed it down to a top 5, but I got a lot of comments in there from people saying you should have included this person, you should have included that person, how did you leave out this person, oh wow, how come we didn't think of this person? And I thought, well, I did think about all those people, and it's very, very hard to narrow it down to just 5. So I thought, you know what? Let's give the people what they want. Let us do a bit of a different video here on the F1 Chronicle today, and I'm going to do a tier list. I'm going to rank all of the drivers who came close to winning a World Championship but never quite managed it, i.e. all the drivers who finished runner-up in the championship with never winning a world title. Now there's some fantastic drivers on this list, some of the all-time greats of F1, and obviously some people who have very generally been named as the best drivers to never win a world championship. So today I'm going to rank them all the way from S down to A, B and C and D. The way this list works is basically, so if you're in S tier, the top tier, you should have won multiple world championships. If you're in the A tier, you should have won at least one world championship in my opinion. In B, you should have come close to winning a championship at least. In C, you maybe could have got a championship if the cards fell right. And D tier is you were lucky to even get second, basically. Now, before I potentially insult your favourite driver a little bit, I just want to say that this is all by the standards of world champions in Formula 1, the absolute best of the very best. So if I say, oh, your driver's a D tier driver, it's not that they're a D tier driver, it's they're a D tier driver by the standards of drivers who should have won world championships. So you're still an incredible driver, you still had a fantastic career, but you didn't quite win the world championship. So that's basically what this is. Let's dive into it, guys. There's a bunch of drivers on here. So yeah, I'll basically go in the order that they achieve these runners-up spots, so going from the oldest to the most recent. Let's dive in. So before I dive in, I'm just going to start by shouting out tiermaker.com. They're the website that I'm using for this tier list. And yeah, let's dive into it. So I'm going to start with Jose Froilán Gonzalez, who was one of the great Argentines in the early days of Formula 1 in the 1950s. He finished runner-up in 1954, and it was one of his compatriots, Juan Manuel Fangio, who stopped him winning that title that year, I believe. And you know, he was a great driver back in the day for sure. 2 wins, 15 podiums to his name from 30 races. That's an incredible batting average for sure. He was only in F1 for a short time, but obviously made a lasting impact there. I feel like he's kind of in the middle of the road when it comes to these runner-ups though. He's someone who, if the cards fell right, could have possibly won a world championship, but to say that he's on the level of some people who I'm going to speak about very shortly is a bit much, to be honest. So I'm going to put him in C tier. Someone that could have won the world championship had things gone right for him, but I feel like it's a bit of a stretch to put him further up this tier list. Next up, we have Sir Stirling Moss. Now, he is one of the drivers I was referring to by someone who definitely should have won multiple world championships. Moss is regarded as the best driver to never win the world championship, and in fact he finished runner-up on 4 separate occasions in 4 consecutive years from 1955 all the way until 1958. I mean, this guy was unbelievable back in the day. Definitely should have won a world championship. If it wasn't for Fangio, he would have won multiple of them. So for me, without a doubt, Moss has to go to the very top. He has to go into the S tier. There's no other place for Sir Stirling other than that. Next up, let's talk about Tony Brooks, who was runner-up in 1959. Now, a lot of Formula 1 fans may not have heard of Tony Brooks, but Brooks was a good driver back in the day. In fairness, got 6 wins to his name, 10 podiums in total from just 41 races. He competed between 1956 and 1961. He drove for the likes of Ferrari during that time as well, and had some very impressive wins too. I think, the 1959 French Grand Prix, where he was really the fittest and most able driver to master those conditions. So he was a great driver back in the day for sure. To say he should have won multiple world championships, I think that's a bit much. He had a fair crack of the whip basically, and I'm going to put him in C tier overall, same as Gonzalez. I feel like that's a fair way to do this. And just so you guys know as well, I will show a screenshot of all these guys in their positions on the tier list when this is done, but just have to listen to me in the meantime while we go through these. So next up, we're going to go with of Bruce McLaren. Now, McLaren is a very famous name in Formula 1, and yes, Bruce McLaren is the guy who founded McLaren Formula 1, of course. He would finish runner-up in 1960, and he was an incredible driver during his early days. I think he held the record for being the youngest driver to win a race for Formula 1 for many, many years, until I think it was Fernando Alonso who broke that record in the early 2000s. So very much an impressive driver, someone who has had an incredibly lasting impact on Formula 1. If things went differently, I think he could have won a world championship. So I'm going to put him in the B tier here. I feel like he's just a bit better than Brooks and Gonzalez, but at the same time, we don't know what he could have achieved later in his career, because unfortunately he did pass away in 1970 during I think he was testing a car at Goodwood, one of his own cars at Goodwood. Unfortunately, he crashed and passed away. Had he lived, he could have won a world championship. You never know. He did have a long time in F1 though, 1958 to 1970 when he passed away. So things could have gone differently for him for sure had he lived. Someone who also passed before their time as well was Wolfgang von Trips, the runner-up in 1961. Von Trips was leading the World Championship going into the Italian Grand Prix in 1961 as he battled with his Ferrari teammate Phil Hill for the World Championship in that year. Von Trips, tragically though, I believe he passed away during the race. He definitely passed away during that race weekend anyway. And yeah, unfortunately passed away. Easily could have won the World Championship during that year alone, and could have won more had he lived in future years. So for me, Von Trips has to at least be in the A tier, because again, had he lived, there was the Italian Grand Prix, there was the United States Grand Prix as well, still to go that year, I believe. So he could have won it in the year that he did finish runner-up. But yes, he was Formula 1's first posthumous runner-up, and not its only one, tragically, either. We'll get into them very soon. Next up, I'm going to talk about Jackie Ickx. Now, Jackie Ickx is one of the people that got highlighted in my best drivers to never win the World Championship list, and rightfully so. He finished runner-up in 1969 and 1970, finishing runner-up to Sir Jackie Stewart and, of course, Jochen Rindt, Formula 1's only posthumous World Championship winner in 1970. He had a very good crack of the whip. Had things fallen differently, he easily could have won a World Championship, maybe more than one possibly as well. He is, of course, a legend in sports car racing as well. I believe he had the most Le Mans wins for a very long time as well. So an absolute legend of motorsport, without a doubt. Someone who could have managed to win a Formula 1 championship had things gone differently. I struggle to put him into the top tier just because I feel like in Formula 1 there were better drivers than him. There were better drivers during his era, basically. And yes, he did an incredible job for sure, but I'm going to put him in the A tier alongside Von Trips. I'm sure some people have put him in the S tier. I'm going to put him in the A tier though, because I feel like he's not quite on Sir Sterling's level. Not many people are, in fairness. But next up, let's talk about Ronnie Peterson. Tragically, another posthumous runner-up in the World Championship. He during the 1978 Italian Grand Prix, a tragic incident with a start line, basically where the officials did not make everybody stop, so the drivers further behind caught up with the drivers further up, and it just made a massive mess. And Peterson was one of the drivers that got caught up in that, unfortunately passed away later due to his injuries. He did have a decent time in Formula 1 for sure, 10 victories, 26 podiums. Had he lived, he could have possibly won the championship in 78 instead of Andretti, I believe, but he probably would have moved on to another team later on in his career. I think McLaren put an offer in for him or something. So yeah, I think Peterson, without a doubt, should have won a world championship had he lived. So for me, Peterson, the Super Swede, is in the S tier. He has to be. Next up, we've got Gilles Villeneuve. For me, one of the greatest racing drivers ever, without a doubt. Passed away while trying to qualify for the Belgian Grand Prix. He was runner-up in 1979, just behind Jody Scheckter. Very early on in his career as well. An absolutely iconic driver during his era for sure, and remains one of the greatest drivers ever, in my opinion, in Formula 1, without a doubt. No doubt in my mind, Villeneuve to the top, S tier. Let's talk about Carlos Reutemann next. Now, Reutemann was runner-up in 1981, battling with Nelson Piquet for the title that year. He was a good driver during his day, had a very long career for the day, back in the day, 1972 to 1982, 12 wins, 45 podiums, a great driver for sure. And until Colapinto came along, the most recent point scorer from Argentina in Formula 1, holding that for over 40 years at that point. Great driver, had his fair shot at the title, of course, got close to it, didn't quite work out for him. You know what, I did say I was going to put him in the C tier. I'm going to put him in the B tier though. I'm going to put him in the B tier because he did come very close to winning that championship in 1981. So I'll put him in there. I'll put him in there. Next up, Didier Pironi, another, not a posthumous runner-up. He had a career-ending injury in 1982. I'll just correct myself there. He did, of course, pass away well before his time, 87, during I think it was a boating accident. So he was a speedboat racer after he retired from Formula 1. He suffered a career-ending injury at the Hockenheim Ring in 1982. A really horrible season for Ferrari, with what happened to Villeneuve earlier that year too. He easily could have become France's first Formula 1 world champion. Would he have won multiple world championships had he lived? Possibly. I don't think he's quite on the S tier level. I would put him in A tier though, because he's someone who was extremely highly rated. I missed out Claire Regazzoni in 1974. I knew there'd be somebody not on my list there. I skipped past him unfortunately, but I'll just go back to him. Regazzoni was a great driver for sure. He finished third in the year as well, I remember off the top of my head too. So I feel like he probably does get into the C tier. I think D tier is a bit harsh on him for sure. Great driver during the day for sure. On top of that, Michele Alboretto. Oh, no, this is a tough one for me. I love Michele. I think he was brilliant during his day, to be fair. Got some surprise wins for the likes of Tyrrell. He was runner-up with Ferrari in 1985. He was a long way off of Prost though. Was he good enough to win a world championship? I don't think so, to be honest. I feel like he had his shot and it didn't quite work out for him. He's not on that level. So unfortunately, I'm going to put Alboretto as the first D-rated driver. And like I said in the intro, all these drivers are brilliant, but by the standards of champions, some unfortunately don't stack up quite as highly. And it's going to be a similar story as well for his compatriot Riccardo Patrese. He was runner-up in 1992 to Nigel Mansell. Again, long way behind his team. And I know some people will say, oh, he was old by that time. So was Nigel Mansell. Mansell was in his 40s by that point, and he absolutely wiped the floor with him. So for me, Patrese, again, brilliant driver, but for me, he gets in the D tier, which I'm sure that James Hunt would approve, but I am not as harsh on the guy as what Hunt was on his commentary. The next runner-up we've got is from 1997, Heinz Harald Frentzen. Now, again, this is such a tough one to judge. Frentzen was runner-up in 97 by technicality, effectively. It was Michael Schumacher, who originally finished runner-up in 97, was disqualified for the World Championship for the battle that he, for the move that he tried making. The wrong, the part where he hit the wrong part of him, my friend, Jacques Villeneuve back in the day. So Frentzen was actually third place during that season, but he does qualify for this list because technically he was runner-up. So how do I rate him? I was tempted to put him in the D category, but I'm going to put him in C, and I'll tell you why. Because he pulled off miracles in that Jordan in 99, and he was extremely highly rated coming to Formula 1 as well. I feel like it just didn't work out for him at Williams. He wasn't quite on the level of Villeneuve and Hill in the same car, but I'm still gonna put him in the C tier. I say Hill in the same car. If Hill moved on by that point, it was just Villeneuve that was his teammate. But I'm going to put him in C tier. Maybe I'm being too generous to Frentzen there, but I don't think it's as bad as what some people make him out to be. Next up, we've got Eddie Irvine. Now, Irvine was runner-up in 99 when he challenged Mika Hakkinen for the championship, but he only did that because Michael Schumacher broke his leg during the British Grand Prix warm-up. So he did come close to the championship that year. He did have his shot, and I feel like Ferrari would have easily won the Drivers' Championship in 99 had Schumacher not had his injury. So in that sense, when Irvine got his shot, it didn't quite work out for him. It's difficult, of course, going from being the second driver to being the main guy, but still the fact he was clearly the second driver shows that he was such a long way off of Schumacher. As most drivers would be, to be fair. Michael Schumacher, one of the all-time greats, but Irvine, even though he did pull off some heroics at times for the Jaguars and the Jordans, I'm going to put him in D tier. Next up, there's David Coulthard. Again, similarly, really. I mean, I'll skip ahead in a sense with him. I'll put him in the D tier because he had his chance. He was in the same car as Mika Hakkinen. 98, 99 was miles off. It made so many mistakes. Made mistakes at Williams as well, notably. As he matured through his career, he pulled off some great results for Red Bull later on as well. Was runner-up in 01. Hakkinen was half retired effectively by that point, though. I feel like his head wasn't fully in the game. So for me, Coulthard was never good enough to win a world championship, in my opinion. I don't think he was ever there, personally. So I'm going to put him in the D tier. Great driver, of course, but not a champion. Not a champion in F1. Next up, Rubens Barrichello. Rubinho, one of my favourite drivers of all time. Runner-up in 2002 and 2004, thanks to the absolutely dominant Ferrari during that time. Good enough to win a world championship? No. No, not quite. There was definite hype around the kid when he came through in the mid-90s, but not quite on that level. Pulled off some brilliant results for sure. Maybe I've got a bit of sympathy for Rubens, but I'm going to put him in the C tier. I feel like he's on that sort of level where possibly he could have won a championship if certain Michael Schumacher didn't exist, but he did exist, and the guy won a lot of championships, so there we go. Another Brazilian is next, Felipe Massa, runner-up in 2008. And now, I am sure some people are going to say that you're being too kind on Massa again here, but I'm going to put him in the C tier, and I'll tell you why. Because Felipe Massa was a brilliant Formula 1 driver before his accident. Before Hungary 2009, for me, Massa was almost good enough to win a championship. He was so close, and he beat Kimi Räikkönen fair and square in that car in 2008. When it came time to battle for the championship, though, he did just miss out to Sir Lewis, of course, very famously in Brazil. Massa, for me, very likeable Formula 1 driver, but yeah, after his 2009 crash, he was not the same driver. But if I'll judge it on peak Massa, prime Massa, for me, he gets a C. I think he's in that category. Next up, we have Valtteri Bottas, skipping ahead quite a bit here. The first of the drivers who's still active on the grid. He was runner-up in 2019 and 2020, a long way behind Sir Lewis Hamilton. Good on his day for sure, could challenge Lewis in the right circumstances, but miles off of it. And for me, Bottas unfortunately gets into the D tier. He was never good enough to win a world championship and was quite a distance off it, to be fair. He was never close to doing it either, and so I'm going to put him in there in that one. Next up, we've got Charles Leclerc, the runner-up in 2022. Now, this is going to divide opinion for sure. For me, Charles Leclerc is an incredibly talented Formula 1 driver. I think he's definitely good enough to win a world championship in the right car, in the right circumstances. I think he could well retire one day as a world champion. So using that as my methodology, I think right now with what he's achieved, you'd probably say he's in the B tier, but I think what he will achieve is a world championship in the future, so I'm going to stick him in A. I'm going to put him up there with Ickx and Von Trips. And the final driver on our list, Sergio Perez, D tier. I'm sorry guys, but he's just not performed at Red Bull, and he's had constant speculation about his future, and runner-up in 2023, so that's why he qualifies for this list, but he was a long way behind for Max Verstappen in that. He was so far off. 2 wins compared to his teammates. What was it, 19 victories last season? Not good enough. Not good enough to win a championship. Will never be good enough to win a championship, so he's in the D tier. So there you go, guys. I'll just run you through these very quickly, going from the bottom to the top. So in the D tier, it's Michele Alboretto, Riccardo Patrese, Eddie Irvine, David Coulthard, Valtteri Bottas, and Sergio Perez. In the C tier, it's Gonzalez, Brooks, Regazzoni, Frentzen, Barrichello, Massa. In the B tier, it is McLaren, Reutemann, and Pironi. In the A tier, it's Von Trips, Ickx, and Leclerc. And in the S tier, it's Moss, Peterson, and Villeneuve. I am sure this will not divide opinion. I am sure that everybody will agree with each other in the comments. Just play nice, guys. Bit of a different video for you guys today. Something, you know, I do enjoy doing these longer videos. Do you want to see me do the champions? Do you want me to see me rank the champions and how I think they are the best driver in Formula 1 history ever? Tier list. Let me know if you guys want to see that. I'd love to do that. And again, I'm sure that would never divide opinion between you all. But yeah, hope you enjoyed that. We'll be back very soon with some more F1 content here on the F1Chronicle.com. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell as well. And we'll see you very soon.